Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Modern Work Mondays for Retail. I'm your host, Nolan Wheeler, and as always, we have
Jeff Strasser with Microsoft.
Good to see you again, sir.
Likewise.
So we're going to talk about some terminology on the next couple of videos here. The first one we're going to do on terminology is we're going to talk about the coefficient of substitution. So I'm going to do my best to define this. Probably should have written this down before. But when we think about the coefficient of substitution, it's really more an example. If I'm going shopping and I have one SKU in mind and I've researched it and I know exactly that's the SKU that I want, and if they don't have that SKU, I'm not going to transact at the store. But if I go there with a shopping list and I need a bunch of things and they don't have something, sometimes I can substitute for it because maybe it's, oh, you know what, they're out of 8-foot pieces of 2x4, but I'll buy some 10-footers instead, and I can substitute very easily, maybe some friction and frustration on maybe paying a little bit more, but an easy substitution to keep my job rolling. But if they don't have any of the Milwaukee drills that I use, I'm not going to suddenly change to DeWalt for that example. So that's the premise of the coefficient of substitution.
Yeah. In the challenge and approach that retailers have to take will vary, probably depending on the category as well, right? And so some things being much more easily able to be replaced or substituted, while others cannot be substituted, like your drill example, right? If it's the wrong brand, wrong battery, you're not going to go buy into a new ecosystem just because of that product. And what is the risk relative to, in your given market, where risk to going to a competitor, risk to hopping on your phone and purchasing the item online so it's there the next day if you don't want to go driving around town to the store that's 25 minutes away. What are your thoughts on the considerations that retailers need to take to, of course, minimize the need to substitute or make sure for the right categories there are the right substitutable, if that's the right word, replacement products in those categories? And then also, like, from a technology standpoint, for those categories where there is no viable substitute, what are some options that you can think of, especially as you kind of have lived in this world in a large part of your career, that may solve that need or reduce the customer's propensity to go to a competitor or hop on the phone and make that purchase from a competitor right in the store?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're basically saying, Nolan, what on earth does this have to do with frontline work? And I think the link there is we don't need to help somebody in the aisle substituting craft dinner. There's all those categories are very easily substitutable. Where we do need help are in those more challenging spaces. Usually when we look at the coefficient of substitution, they're usually high ticket items because it's like, you know what, I'm not going to buy a $500 drill and then use it and then just shelve it as a spare. But I will do that if it's a potato peeler or whatever the case may be, right? So price has got such a huge impact on the coefficient. And then full service stuff, like you think about apparel, size, style, color, those are the things that those showstoppers whereby if we can talk to an associate in that moment in time, if we can get help for all of those, we can show a much stronger coefficient substitution and thus that less level of frustration. I think everybody who listens, and probably you yourself, we will drive past stores to drive to one that we trust more because we know that they're going to respect our time and we know that their inventory is better and it's a cleaner store and we've had better success there in terms of those visits. Those items are and those outcomes, those are the key parts of this, because when you can't substitute, you're now training your customer to go to another retailer or to go buy it online.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the apparel scenario because in the dressing room, need a new size. One, the risk of I got to put my clothes back on, go out there, and if I do that, do I even want to go into the store, go back into the dressing room? So how do I communicate from right within the dressing room to an associate within the store? But also, if we know that size isn't available, what options can we present to the user right there in the dressing room saying, hey, we don't have this in the store. So saying, I need a size, 34 waist instead of a size 32 waist. If you can communicate that right with the associate, great. If they have it in the store, they bring it to you. That prevents the risk of that customer walking out the door after they put their clothes back on. But two, if that item's not available, what technologies and tools can we use to say, hey, we don't have this item, but we can ship it to you and you can try it on home and return it for, back to the store if it doesn't fit, and make that transaction right there in the dressing room. So there are so many tools and options to capture that sale and risk losing that customer.
Yeah. I mean, it can be as simple as I was grocery shopping yesterday, and they didn't have any bean sprouts out in the produce department, and I got real lucky. I found someone, and then I asked him to go get them, and he was in and out quick, and I was super happy because I was doing some Asian-inspired food, and it was just not going to be as good without those darn bean sprouts, and I already had 6 of the items I needed in my cart. So, a very simple understanding of it, but like there are so many times when we decide to go and be the shopper. We are the picker, right? Like we just talked about this on a call I had earlier today. Why on earth do people still go to brick and mortar stores was the topic of conversation. And I think it comes down to is that we trust ourselves more than we trust others. So when you think about substitution, I trust that I'm going to make the effort to go and see if there's bean sprouts. And if all of a sudden my dinner falls apart, I don't want some arbitrary substitution, bean sprouts in a can or whatever the heck it is. I will go pivot and go like, oh, I guess we're doing something else for dinner tonight. Or I guess I'm going to buy something different at Nordstrom's, or I'm going to do something different now at the Home Depot. So it really comes down to the fact of like giving tools to our best associates, which are the customer. It's the most labor spent in brick and mortar is the customer's labor. So how do we give them the tools to succeed? And that's almost always connecting an associate to a customer.
Yeah, and for the record, feel free to hold the bean sprouts if we're having dinner. Not my first choice. So if they're out of bean sprouts, it's okay with me.
Pad Thai, it's critical. Put in the comments, critical Pad Thai. All right, man. Well, that's the coefficient of substitution, and we'll do a couple more of these where we go through some others. But I think the next one we do is we're going to talk about floor fill absorption. See you next week.
Sounds great. Absolutely.
See you, buddy.